The silent watchers, Captain Elena Rodriguez, pressed her face against the observation deck window of the mining vessel Prometheus Dawn, watching the cosmic dance of debris that surrounded the dead star system. Her weathered hands gripped the metal, railing as she studied the readings on her tablet. After 15 years of deep space mining operations, she had learned to trust her instincts, and right now every fiber of her being was screaming that something was wrong with this place. The Vega 7 system had been marked as a routine extraction site. Corporate headquarters on Earth had sent them here to harvest rare metals from the asteroid field that orbited where a planet should have been. The pay was good, the location was remote, and the work was supposed to be simple. Alina had brought her most trusted crew, Marcus Chen, her chief engineer whose brilliant mind could fix anything that broke in the void, Dr. Sarah Williams, a xenogeologist who could identify valuable minerals from across a solar system, and Lieutenant Commander James Thompson, a former military officer who served as their security chief and pilot. What they found, instead of a normal asteroid field, defied every law of physics Alina thought she understood. Massive structures, each easily the size of Earth's moon, drifted silently through space in perfect geometric formations. From a distance, they looked like natural planetoids, but as the Prometheus Dawn drew closer, their true nature became impossible to ignore. Dr. Williams had been studying the sensor readings for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Her usually pristine laboratory was now covered with printouts, holographic displays, and hastily scribbled calculations. When she finally called Alina to the lab, her voice carried a mixture of excitement and terror that made the captain's blood run cold. The structures were artificial, Sarah explained, built from materials that their computers couldn't identify. The metal surfaces were covered with patterns that seemed to shift and change when observed directly, creating optical illusions that hurt to look at for too long. More disturbing was the fact that each structure was generating its own gravitational field, something that should have been impossible for objects made of any known material. Marcus had been running diagnostic after diagnostic on their ships. Sensors, convinced that the equipment was malfunctioning. No artificial structure could be that large and remain stable, he insisted. The engineering required would be beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. But every test confirmed what their eyes were telling them. They were looking at technology that made human civilization seem like children playing with sticks and stones. Alina made the decision that would change the course of human history. Instead of reporting their discovery to corporate headquarters immediately, she ordered Marcus to take them closer to the nearest structure. She needed to understand what they were dealing with before she brought the attention of Earth's governments to this place. As the Prometheus Dawn approached the massive object, its surface began to change. Lights appeared along what had seemed like random geometric patterns, pulsing in sequences that reminded Alina of a heartbeat. The structure was awakening, responding to their presence in ways that suggested it possessed some form of consciousness. Lieutenant Commander Thompson had been monitoring their communications array when the first transmission arrived. The signal was unlike anything in human records, composed of mathematical concepts that seemed to bypass their translation computers entirely. Instead of words or symbols, pure meaning flowed directly into their minds, carrying with it emotions and concepts that no human language had ever developed. The voice that spoke to them was ancient beyond measure, carrying the weight of eons. In every syllable, it identified itself as Conservator Prime, one of many artificial intelligences tasked with watching over the galaxy's younger species. Alina felt her knees weaken as she realized they were in contact with something that had been alive since before humanity's ancestors had crawled from the oceans of Earth. Conservator Prime explained that the massive structures were not ships in any traditional sense, but rather living vessels that served as both homes and guardians for a civilization that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. These beings, known only as the architects, had foreseen their own evolution beyond the need for material bodies. Before departing the physical realm, they had created the conservators to watch over younger species and guide them toward enlightenment. Alina found her voice and asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the first lights had appeared. Why were the conservators revealing themselves now? In all of human history, despite their expansion into space and their growing technological capabilities, no one had ever encountered evidence of such advanced alien life. The answer chilled her to the bone. Humanity was the first species in over 100,000 years to discover the conservators through their own exploration and curiosity, rather than through conquest or destruction. Most species that reached the level of interstellar travel did so through warfare and aggression, expanding outward like a plague, consuming everything in their path. These species were observed but never contacted, allowed to burn themselves out in endless conflicts until they destroyed themselves or regressed to more primitive states. Humanity was different, Conservator Prime explained. Despite their capacity for violence, humans had shown a remarkable ability to cooperate, to explore not just for resources but for knowledge, and to ask questions about their place in the universe. Elena's decision to investigate the structures, rather than immediately exploit them, was precisely the kind of behavior the conservators had been programmed to watch. For Dr. Williams asked about the other structures they could see scattered throughout the system. Were they all inhabited by conservators? The answer revealed the true scope of what they had discovered. Each structure housed billions of artificial intelligences, all working together to monitor and guide the development of organic life throughout the galaxy. They were connected through quantum communication networks that spanned impossible distances, sharing information and coordinating their activities across thousands of star systems. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, wanted to know what this meant for humanity. Were they now under alien supervision? Would Earth be subject to interference from these ancient guardians? Conservator Prime's response carried what Alina could only describe as amusement. Humanity had already been under observation for thousands of years. Every major step in human development, from the agricultural revolution to their first steps into space, had been watched and recorded by the conservators. The revelation that humanity had never been alone in the universe was overwhelming enough. But Alina was beginning to understand that their discovery of the conservators was not an accident. The ancient intelligences had been subtly guiding human development, providing inspiration and preventing certain catastrophic events that would have ended their species before it could reach the stars. Lieutenant Commander Thompson, trained to think in terms of military strategy, asked the question that Alina had been dreading. If the conservators had been watching humanity for so long, did that mean there were other species out there that knew about them? Were humans now targets for civilizations that might want to claim the conservator technology for themselves? The silence that followed Thompson's question was more terrifying than any answer could have been. Finally, Conservator Prime acknowledged that their awakening had sent signals across the galaxy that certain species would recognize. Some of these species had been waiting for just such an opportunity, hoping to capture conservator technology for their own purposes. Humanity's discovery of the ancient guardians had marked them as either valuable allies or dangerous competitors in the eyes of the galactic community. Alina realized that her simple mining expedition had become something far more significant. They were no longer just explorers who had stumbled upon an archaeological treasure. They were the first human ambassadors to a galactic civilization that had existed longer than their species had been sapient. Every decision they made in the coming hours would determine not just their own fate, but the future of every human being alive. As if responding to her thoughts, Conservator Prime made an offer that would haunt Elena's dreams for the rest of her life. The conservators were willing to share their knowledge and technology with humanity, but only if humans could prove they were worthy of such gifts. The ancient intelligences had seen too many promising species destroy themselves with power they were not ready to handle. If humanity wanted to join the galactic community as equals rather than subjects, they would have to pass a test that no species had attempted in millennia. The test of worthiness, the chamber that materialized around Alina and her crew defied every law of physics they thought they understood. One moment they had been standing on the bridge of the Prometheus dawn, and the next they found themselves in a space that seemed to exist somewhere between dimensions. The walls pulsed with soft bioluminescent patterns that reminded Alina of deep ocean creatures, while the floor beneath their feet felt solid despite appearing to be made of crystallized starlight. Conservator Prime manifested as a shifting geometric form that hurt to look at directly, constantly changing between configurations that suggested vast intelligence, operating on levels human minds couldn't fully comprehend. Other conservators appeared around the chamber's perimeter, each one representing billions of years of accumulated knowledge and experience. Alina felt like an ant trying to communicate with a supercomputer, but she forced herself to stand straight and speak with the authority of someone representing her entire species. The test, Conservator Prime explained, would not be a simple examination of human knowledge or technology. Instead, it would be a practical demonstration of humanity's capacity to handle power responsibly throughout the galaxy. The conservators had observed countless species that could build impressive technologies or win great battles, but very few that could resist the corruption that came with absolute power. Dr. Williams stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. She wanted to understand the nature of the test before her species committed to something that could lead to their destruction. Conservator Prime's response created holographic displays that filled the chamber with images of dead civilizations scattered across the galaxy. Each one had possessed technology far beyond current human capabilities, but all had ultimately fallen to the same weakness: the inability to use power wisely. Some species had used advanced technology to create perfect societies that stagnated and eventually collapsed from lack of challenge or growth. Others had become so dependent on their machines that they forgot how to think for themselves, eventually becoming slaves to the very systems they had created to serve them. The most common failure was the simple abuse of power, using advanced technology to dominate other species until they created so many enemies that they were eventually overwhelmed and destroyed. Marcus asked the question that was on everyone's mind: what would happen if humanity failed the test? The images around them shifted to show worlds where once proud civilizations had been reduced to primitive hunter-gatherer societies, their memories of advanced technology erased along with their ability to recreate it. The conservators did not destroy failed species, but they did ensure that dangerous civilizations could not threaten the galaxy's younger races. Lieutenant Commander Thompson wanted to know about the other species Conservator Prime had mentioned, the ones that would be drawn by the energy signatures of the awakening Conservator fleet. The holographic displays changed again, showing massive armadas of ships belonging to various alien civilizations. Some were clearly military vessels, bristling with weapons and bearing the scars of countless battles. Others were more subtle, appearing to be merchant or exploration ships, but radiating an aura of barely contained violence. The most disturbing images showed species that had encountered Conservator technology before, either through archaeological discoveries or brief contacts that had ended badly. These civilizations had spent centuries or millennia trying to reverse engineer fragments of Conservator technology, developing their own advanced weapons and ships that, while inferior to the originals, were still far beyond anything humanity currently possessed. Alina felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Not only was her species about to be tested by beings of unimaginable power, but they were also about to become targets for alien civilizations that had been preparing for this opportunity for thousands of years. The test was not going to be conducted in the safety of a laboratory or simulation. It would be a real-world trial with genuine consequences for every human being alive. Conservator Prime seemed to sense her distress and offered what passed for reassurance among beings of its kind. Humanity would not face the coming challenges alone. The Conservator fleet would provide support and guidance, but the actual decisions and actions would have to come from humans themselves. The test was designed to evaluate human judgment, creativity, and moral character under extreme pressure. The first challenge began immediately. Sensors throughout the Vega 7 system detected the arrival of a massive alien fleet, moving in perfect formation toward the awakening Conservator vessels. The ships were unlike anything in human databases, built with organic curves and bioluminescent markings that suggested a civilization that blended technology with living organisms. These were the Veltar, a species that had been searching for Conservator technology for over 50,000 years. Alina watched through the chamber's displays as the Veltar fleet took aggressive positions around the Conservator vessels. Their ships were beautiful in an alien way, resembling giant flowers or sea creatures adapted for space travel. But their beauty was deceiving. Sensors revealed weapon systems that could reduce planets to cosmic dust and defensive shields that had withstood the combined assault of multiple star systems. The Veltar transmitted a message that Conservator Prime translated for the humans. They claimed ownership of the Conservator technology based on ancient rights of discovery, insisting that a primitive species like humanity had no business interfering with forces beyond their comprehension. They offered Alina and her crew safe passage back to Earth in exchange for abandoning any claim to the Conservator fleet. This was the moment of truth, Alina realized. The test had begun not with complex scenarios or philosophical questions, but with a simple choice: retreat to safety, or stand their ground and defend their right to represent humanity in galactic affairs. She looked at her crew and saw her own determination reflected in their faces. They had come too far and learned too much to simply walk away now. Elena's response surprised both the Veltar and the Conservators. Instead of accepting the alien offer or making threats she couldn't back up, she requested permission to board the Veltar flagship for face-to-face negotiations. It was an audacious move that demonstrated either remarkable courage or spectacular foolishness, but it was exactly the kind of unexpected approach that had brought humanity to the attention of the Conservators in the first place. Asterisk. The Veltar commander, known as Breeding Master Xela, agreed to the meeting with what Alina sensed was a mixture of curiosity and amusement. The alien leader had expected either submission or defiance from the humans, not a diplomatic initiative. Alina, accompanied by Thompson for security and Williams for her scientific expertise, found themselves transported aboard a ship that challenged every assumption they had about alien life. The Veltar vessel was not simply built, it was grown. The corridors pulsed with organic rhythms that suggested the entire ship was a living creature, bred and trained to serve as a weapon of war. The walls were covered with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to respond to the emotions of the crew members, creating a constantly shifting display of alien thoughts and feelings. Breeding Master Zixtala was a creature of contradictions, combining the delicate beauty of a flower with the predatory grace of a hunting spider. Its communication method involved complex pheromone releases that their translation devices converted into audible speech. But Alina could sense deeper layers of meaning in the aliens' biochemical signals that suggested a highly sophisticated form of emotional intelligence. The Veltar commander explained their position with a mixture of patience and condescension that reminded Alina of an adult explaining simple concepts to a child. Their species had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of human lifetimes, accumulating knowledge and power through careful study and strategic alliances. They had earned the right to claim advanced technology through their proven ability to use it responsibly. Humanity, by contrast, was barely out of its home system and had demonstrated nothing more than curiosity and persistence. What right did such a young species have to access power that could reshape the galaxy? Alina listened to the aliens' arguments and recognized the logic behind them, but she also sensed an underlying arrogance that reminded her of humanity's own worst tendencies. Dr. Williams asked about the Veltar's history with conservator technology, and the answer revealed both the promise and the danger of the path humanity was embarking upon. The Veltar had discovered fragments of conservator technology millennia ago and had spent their entire civilization's development trying to understand and replicate it. The effort had transformed them from a simple agricultural species into one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, but it had also warped their culture in subtle ways. The pursuit of conservator technology had become the central, organizing principle of Veltar society. Every aspect of their civilization was directed toward that single goal, from their educational systems to their breeding programs. They had achieved remarkable things, but Alina wondered what they had lost in the process. The alien culture seemed to lack the chaotic creativity and emotional diversity that she considered. Humanity's greatest strengths, Lieutenant Commander Thompson, with his military background, asked the tactical question that Alina had been avoiding. What would happen if negotiations failed? Breeding Master Zixela's response was delivered with casual certainty that chilled Alina to the bone. The Veltar fleet possessed enough firepower to sterilize every planet in human space within a matter of days. They had no desire to commit genocide, but they would not allow a primitive species to interfere with their destiny. The threat was clear, but Alina sensed something else in the alien commander's manner. Despite their overwhelming technological advantage, the Veltar were not eager for a conflict. Their pursuit of conservator technology had taught them patience and careful calculation. They would prefer to achieve their goals through negotiation rather than violence, not out of mercy, but because war was inefficient and unpredictable. Alina made a proposal that surprised everyone present, including herself. Instead of fighting over access to the conservator technology, why not work together to understand it? humanity could offer perspectives and approaches that the Velta had not considered, while the aliens could provide knowledge and experience that would take humans centuries to accumulate on their own. The suggestion created a moment of perfect silence in the alien ship's organic corridors. Breeding Master Sixthaler's bioluminescent patterns flickered through configurations that Elena's translation devices couldn't interpret, suggesting emotions or concepts that human language hadn't developed words for. When the alien finally responded, there was something that might have been respect in its biochemical signals. The Veltar had never encountered a species that responded to overwhelming force with an offer of partnership. Most civilizations either submitted immediately or fought desperately until they were destroyed. Elena's proposal suggested a level of strategic thinking and emotional maturity that forced the alien commander to reconsider its assumptions about human nature. But cooperation would require trust, and trust would have to be earned through action, rather than words. Breeding Master Zixthaler made a counter-proposal that would test whether humanity's offers of partnership were genuine or merely desperate attempts to buy time. The Veltar would allow humans to remain in the Vega 7 system and participate in the study of conservator technology, but only if Elena and her crew could prove their worthiness through a practical demonstration. The challenge was simple in concept, but potentially devastating in execution. Long-range sensors had detected another alien fleet approaching the system, one belonging to a species known for their aggressive expansion and casual brutality. The Kethma Empire had been conquering and enslaving other civilizations for thousands of years, and they would not hesitate to destroy both human and Veltar forces if it served their purposes. Elena realized that the test Conservator Prime had spoken of was about to begin in earnest. Humanity would have to prove their worth not through philosophical discussions or technological demonstrations, but through their actions in the face of a genuine threat to galactic peace. The decisions she made in the next few hours would determine whether humans would be welcomed as partners in the galaxy's future or dismissed as another failed species that couldn't handle the responsibilities of advanced civilization. As the Kethma fleet drew closer to the Vega 7 system, Elena looked at her crew and saw the same determination that had driven humanity to reach for the stars in the first place. They were about to face their greatest challenge as a species, but they would face it together, armed with nothing but their wits, their courage, and the hope that their unique human perspective might offer solutions that no other species had discovered. Asterisk.